In the absence of Dr. Bell, the torch would need the care of new hands in a new era. Leadership of the school fell to young Johnson professor, Dr. David Eubanks.
I really had no idea that I was being considered for the presidency of Johnson. I was very humbled, felt greatly inadequate for the task, but I told him that I would talk it over with Margaret, we'd pray about it, and give them a decision. A few weeks later, I did.
If Bell had brightened Johnson's flame, Dr. Eubanks would seek to broaden it for greater kingdom impact, championing the school and the Christian service opportunities it offered like none had before. He quickly gained respect as a servant leader and tireless ambassador.
Our mission is to educate students for specialized Christian service, with primary emphasis on preaching.
New opportunities led to a doubled student population in the early 70s, creating a desperate need for increased facilities and additional scholarships.
I'm not for sure I have a ready answer to why we grew as we did. I had made a commitment when I became president to provide more options, career options for women students.
We also were one of the first of the so-called Bible colleges to be accredited, and through Dr. Eubanks' primary leadership on that, we were accredited in 1979.
Over the years, numerous buildings were added, including a new main building, an activity center, and dining hall. It was left to Dr. Eubanks to lead in raising support to make these developments possible. Through faithful friends, the work of faculty and staff, and the prayers of all, God supplied needed funds for continued growth and financial stability. And this strength allowed Johnson's light to shine in new areas.
There also was a strong emphasis on world missions. There was not a missions program, and yet Johnson put out more missionaries than nearly any school.
Of course, the brightest developments that happened was this China connection. Due to Dr. Templer's efforts, our students began to go to China. I've traveled, I think now, to near on to 50 countries, and a lot of those trips have been to visit alumni serving on the mission field.
In the early 2000s, enrollment doubled again, requiring a great expansion of facilities. Dr. Eubanks, cherished for his devoted leadership, announced his plans to retire. Upon this retirement, he had served as Johnson's president for an astounding 38 years. In 2007, Dr. Eubanks passed the torch to Dr. Gary Weidman.
Well, I could say that Dr. Weidman was chosen president because he was one of my students and was the first professor that I hired.
Dr. Weidman and I actually started at Johnson together in the fall of 1961. Since then, he's gone on to become a distinguished graduate, having served as an administrator and a dean and a provost at different educational institutions.
He's very knowledgeable of the heritage and the history and the philosophy and the mission of Johnson. He's a Johnson man. He was just a whole package.
The first time the board talked to me about it, I said anybody would want to be crazy to follow David Eubanks. So I knew it was a daunting task to come here in this role. On the other hand, I knew the condition and the reputation and the constituent support that the school had, like no other school in our brotherhood.
Under Dr. Weidman, 21 new programs began, allowing the education of students for more areas of service than ever before, including urban studies, business administration, sport and fitness leadership, and leadership studies, Johnson's first doctorate. These new programs, developing international connections and a desire to help alumni serving in challenging foreign countries, led to a new name and a revised mission statement.
Johnson University educates students for Christian ministries and other strategic vocations framed by the Great Commission in order to extend the kingdom of God among all nations.
Johnson had embraced an expanded view of ministry while holding on to its biblical focus. But President Weidman's insightful efforts also laid a foundation for future growth by organizing the university into 8 schools. Little did he know how soon that growth would occur.
Jim Book, the chairman of Florida Christian College's trustees, called me in 2012 and asked if we at Johnson would assume the ownership and the management of their college. I got a phone call
from the president of Florida Christian College, and I was the chairman of the trustees at the time, and said, Jim, we got some bad news. Regional accreditation is no longer going to look favorably at Florida Christian College.
They lost their accreditation in a unique way. They were the first school in the Accrediting Association to lose accreditation solely for financial reasons, and we had the capacity to help the financial struggles that they were having.
Under Dr. Weidman's discerning guidance, Johnson Bible College has become Johnson University, with 2 campuses, as well as residency programs in several states, and online bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees. More than 1,300 students are being served through the far-reaching influence of these campuses.
So much has happened in our relationship to China. Last summer, I was in China having a meal with a good friend of mine who's in the Provincial Office of Education. And I was telling him, can you believe the Ministry of Education approved our degree? And he smiled and said, Gary, Johnson University is the only Christian university that has an approved master's degree in China.
The torch hasn't stopped spreading its light from Kimberlin Heights since the birth of the School of Evangelists in 1893. But 125 years later, it is once again time for new leadership to carry the flame.
This is my 50th year in higher education, working in higher education. I started here, and I'm ending here 50 years later. I will be within 2.5 months of being 75. Those are pretty good indicators, I think, that it's time for me to go. Plus, I was sure that there were good candidates who could step in.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. and Mrs. Tommy Smith.
It's so encouraging to have received the kind of support that we've received. I'm very pleased that I have this opportunity, and I want to make the most of that opportunity that God has given me to lead this great university.
So another chapter begins at Johnson University. A new torchbearer steps forward to lead because of a single spark. Students with a passion for sharing the gospel leave Johnson's doors and spread across the globe, a world in need of God's light.
In 1999, Mary Lou took a group of 10 students or so to China to teach English. And they went to a school in Zhengzhou, China, called School Number 47.
She fell in love with that school, and they fell in love with her. Wanted to go the next year, next summer. The principal of that school communicated with me by email in 2005. He said, I'd like to come to Johnson. I'd like to see firsthand a school that would have a teacher like Mary Lou Martin, would have students like the students that have come and taught for us. And so I said, come on. He and I signed an agreement by which our students would continue to go to School 47, and one of his teachers would come and live on our campus.
The first 2 times I went to China, I didn't get to meet Chen. The third year I went, oh, we were long lost friends. He was so happy to see me, never seen me before, you know, but he's a very atypical Chinese. He's demonstrative, he's dramatic, he's loud, emotional. And then he started talking about Mary Lou, and he started crying. I said, oh, Mr. Chen, we're having this celebration of what you and Mary Lou started 10 years ago. He threw up his arms and said, fine, I will come. We made him honorary ambassador for Johnson to all of China. He said, I would watch Mary Lou, a woman of advanced age, and her students, and there was something different about them. He said, that's why I came to Johnson, to figure out what it was. I said, Mr. Chen, I think I know that difference.